Welcome everybody to the Network Diagram 101 session series. Give me a like and subscribe if you want to see more of these. Okay, we're going to start with a pen and paper. The scenario is that there's a hospital that needs to interface with a vendor network. Privacy and security policy requires that the firewall segregates the two networks. Secure zone will be established with layer 2 connectivity, and the diagram needs to be both technical and high level at the same time.
So we need to create a diagram that our privacy and security group can look at, digest, and understand how that connectivity is laid out, as well as the vendor side, understanding how their design needs to collaborate with our own design and ensure that the connectivity is functional. And then it also needs to have enough detail that the engineering group can take this design and implement that and go from there. So we'll start with a pair of firewalls. We're going to do a horizontal type diagram. I feel that in this scenario, laying it out from top to bottom just works a little better for the flow of what we're trying to accomplish. So we got a pair of firewalls here. We'll just make it very simple. We're not going to get too into the weeds here and detail. We're just going to lay it out, and always start with a pen and paper or a pencil and paper, and that way you can always refer back to that to make sure that you stay on track. So firewall pair with an HA failover cable between the two. Above that, in this scenario, we have a collapsed core, so there's no distribution layer. These are two core switches that are going to interface with the firewalls, so they're right there. Go ahead and make a connection there. In this secure zone, we're going to have a pair of layer 2 switches, 4 channel between the two. And then the vendor is going to drop off their pair of routers connecting to our layer 2 switches. And under those two routers, they'll have their own private network. Above the two core switches, we just have a couple pair of routers that will have layer 3 uplinks. And those will connect to the WAN, which has the servers that the equipment in the vendor side of the network need to communicate to, as well as some other core services like DNS, DHCP, and TP. Okay, so then what I think we're going to do in this diagram also is create some layers of the different zones to sort of help illustrate the solution. So I think it's important. This is a firewall, solution separating two networks. So it's important to make sure that that component is understood by anybody looking at it. So I think we'll put a layer between the firewalls and the vendor routers. We'll call that a secure zone. We'll put the vendor zone down there. So anything below this pair of routers will be the vendor zone. It's all managed by them. Then we'll create a zone for the local LAN. And then anything above that will be WAN data center services. So there's going to be several different types of devices that on the vendor network that need to communicate to the servers and the particular core services that are in the data center. Obviously, the firewall will be configured for rules to allow that communication to pass through there. Typically, on the vendor network, they use a monitoring station. They also have telemetry devices that are wired. And then third piece is they use wireless access points for wireless devices. Now these access points will be hardwired to their network equipment. Same with the monitoring stations and any kind of telemetry devices. So there's going to be two VLANs, VLAN NET100 for the wire devices and VLAN 101 for the wireless. Okay, through this secure zone, we're going to need to allow traffic, DNS, DHCP, network time protocol, and services from the servers to the devices themselves. On the local LAN, there is a DNS component, so there's a local DNS server. And there's also a DHCP server in addition to the data center services, so there's some redundancy there, and we'll graphically represent that in the final product. So here we have the basic layout with the layers. I think that's important. Again, we're going to highlight the secure zone so that when somebody with a security group looks at this particular diagram, they're going to instantly see the line of security between the vendor network and the hospital network. Okay, great. So we'll start making this.
Okay, we're going to get started here. We should be able to fit all of the information on an 11 by 17 page of paper. If you're not familiar, we're going to right click on the main tab. Page size and predefined size, ledger 17 by 11. It's going to be wider than tall. So it's basically two 8.5 by 11s put together. Okay, and then I usually like to find the center point of the paper. So we'll do that there, and we'll kind of work out from there. Symmetry is pretty important if you're making a visually stimulating diagram, and it also suggests, or it's easy to describe the redundancy when there's symmetry. So we're going to start in the center, and we're going to work our way out to the sides. Probably going to add a second and third margin line here, guideline, so we can put our icons and work down from there. Now I created a stencil group with all the shapes that I want to use for this diagram. So something that I go over in the website as far as a tip to create stencils of commonly used icons so you're not hunting around. You can kind of build it as you go along if you want. It's easy to share as well, so something to think about while you're building a diagram is to create a stencil set so that you don't have to go dig around for those things. So I'm going to throw the firewalls out first, probably get them in around the center here. Might adjust them a little bit, but gonna at least start with that since that's kind of the major focus of the diagram itself. So then gonna create a second one since we have two firewalls, same as our drawing that we did. Also want to use our layer 2 switches that we're going to put in at below those guys before the vendor network. And then I have a stencil here as well for the vendor's router, so we're going to drop that in there. We're going to work our way up a little bit. Got the core that we discussed. Going to give a little more space in there because we got some more information to throw in there, and do the same there. So I got two of those, and then I also have a router as well. So we're going to add the router. I'm probably going to adjust this a little bit, just kind of seeing how much space we're taking up. So we're going to probably just shift some of these things down a little bit. Maybe grab the whole group, kind of get it so that it's going to make sense. We're going to see what else we got to add. So we may even have to make some more adjustments after that. Okay, so we got the layout there. We're going to have a WAN component to that. So I've created a cloud here. I'm going to send that to the back just to get it out of the way of the icons there. Probably center about there. Want to create the layered lines of the different infrastructure. So I'm going to start probably around here, and I'm holding the shift button down here to make sure that it's perfectly straight. I don't really care where it goes right at the moment. I just want to create that line first. So I like some of the smaller dashes. It's kind of nice. And I feel like we can lighten the line a little bit so that it's not distracting to the other components, but I just want to have a line so that we can figure out where to go. I think we're going to put the line here for to mark where the WAN and data center services is located. We got secure zone, send that to back. So in between here, we have the local network that includes the cores and the firewall edge. We're going to have, a security zone. It's going to end up down here where our vendors' routers are located. And then I'm just going to put another line down here to sort of just kind of cap that stuff off. Okay, so we got that there. I want to zoom in a little bit. We can start putting some links in place. So I created a link here. It's basically an orange segment using just a straight line tool with the line ends being little round circles. And I find that it's a nice way to sort of cover up any kind of imperfections or you see the little round bulb at the end sort of covers lines and just makes it a little bit cleaner. Sometimes it makes it a little more interesting than just a straight line. So I'm duplicating these lines here using the boss tips to use quick keys to basically grab these lines, duplicate them so that I don't have to sit here and try to recreate those lines every time. It's one of the best tips to just make things go much faster than they typically do if you're trying to recreate that. So now we got the cross lines there. We got a trunk between the two cores. We also have a link between the firewalls and the cores. I have a pre-created red link that I'm going to throw up there. It's for the HA pair. I'm going to grab another orange link, bring it down to our layer 2 switches. Of course, their switches are trunked between the two of those. And then we're going to use a blue link, which I created to suggest that it's copper as opposed to fiber. So the handoff between the layer 2 switch to the router is copper. So we're going to suggest that there. If we look at this, we have the basic framework of the network that we're going to draw. Might want to move a couple little things up here just to sort of shrink it. Now, shoot that here again. If you do use anchor points, tip in the website from the website, you can typically adjust these things up and down, side to side, and it'll keep those links connected. So that's really what Visio was intended for, is to connect these icons and to be able to shift them around without doing too much rework of the links. It's not a perfect science, but for the most part, it does work pretty well. Group them together using quick keys to do that, just to make it faster. Okay, everything's in the back. And I think I like the security zone. I'll make that red. I just like the red is what we're really focusing on. This diagram is to be viewed by security groups, so I always want to make sure that they understand that. I'm going to put it kind of going through half of the router, since in theory, the outside interfaces are what's in that security zone from here to here, and everything in between. Okay, so go back up here. I guess we're going to start at the top and kind of work our way down. Now I created I have some icons here that I like to use, specifically VM. I know there's 5 servers as part of the solution, so I'm just going to kind of add some servers up here. And what we're going to do is add some details so that it kind of shows that they're part of the solution. And then, of course, we have a couple other components too. So we have some core services, DNS, 2 DNS servers, 1 in each data center, a DHCP server, and 2 NTP servers. And they're just located in different data centers. We're not necessarily terribly concerned about showing that they're in different data centers. It's just good enough to just call them out. This isn't something that is meant to show the exact infrastructure of every single component. It's really meant to focus on that security zone and how we hand off, or how the two infrastructures work together. Okay, and then I know that there's also a DNS and DHCP component on the local LAN as well. So I'm going to pull that down here and just kind of worry about that later. So I'm going to pull it down and sort of just so I don't forget about it. And then we're going to have some basic services that we're going to just, put in this area here to help build up a little bit of a narrative for the security zone, showing or talking about what protocols are allowed to pass through, and then we'll outline the actual vendor subnets and the VLANs that are used there. So go back up to the local network section. So we're going to use VLAN 400 is the defined VLAN for this particular solution. I created these little call out bubbles ahead of time just to save some time, but it contains the VLAN number, the configuration of the SVI, and then there's a couple of static routes that need to be put in place for this overall solution to work. So we got our second one there. Got some tags. Add those just to call out the device types. We have a core switch tags, did the same thing here. We're kind of combining high level and low level ideas where a single diagram can kind of cover both. So somebody who is not necessarily technical can look at this and understand a little bit with some of these small details, and somebody who's looking for more of a technical overview can dig into those details. We got tags as well that show the name of the device, so the core switch names with the IP address. I made those ahead of time, again, to save some time. If you notice, using a tip from the website about transparency, is you can put this on top of a white shape, change the shape, fill options. And set transparency to 15%. And so you can still see things behind it, even though it's covering it. So it's great to do that over a link, because now I can still see that link connect behind this little badge. And so it's a good little trick to add more layers of detail without obscuring all your connections and those types of things. Okay, so now we're just going to add some more details to this layer here. We got some layer 3 icons. So these uplinks here, they're layer 3 links to the router. They're not necessarily relevant to the solution, but we're just calling it out just in case somebody is kind of looking at the path and trying to understand the network and how that works. So I like to add these little badges to the links just to kind of call that out. Okay, so then we can add some more details to this portion. I do know how this stuff interconnects, so this isn't necessarily a design overview as much as just a diagramming it. So this information has really been worked out ahead of time. It's just part of the overall solution. So I like to use these interface numbers with a little bit of a whiteout background. So you just select some text, hit white for the fill, and of course turn it on its side 90 degrees. And basically then it kind of chops out the link itself and gives you a little bit of a airy space to look at when you're trying to look at those link numbers there. So I know that this in particular is interface gig Ethernet 1.4, so we'll just do that. I know of course it's the same on the other side, so what I can do is just drag that over, copy that, drop that in place as well. So the VLAN 400 is what we're mostly interested in between the core switches. Obviously, there's many other VLANs that don't need to document those since they're not relevant to the solution. So trying to keep it simple, not giving too much information, only information that's useful to them. So I have a 400 VLAN tag that I created. I like to use these little rectangles to signify the VLANs. You can change colors so that it can grab your attention. You'll see we use different colors as we kind of move through here. And just like those are layer 3, this is a layer 2. It's part of a trunk. Just want to call that out from a kind of a high level, just showing that that VLAN 400 is trunk between those two core switches. Then of course, got the layer 2 to the firewall. It's part of that VLAN 400. Grabbing these as well, I'm duplicating them. 400, 400. And inside interface E113. Cheated had that over on another Visio. Same over there. And I also had an IP address already worked out. Make that 5. Okay, we're starting to layer in some more detail. We also had the SVI VLANs. Bring those guys over to show that these layer 2s are in VLAN 400 and the IP addresses of the SVI. Of course, there is we're using HSRP, and so the VIP of that is 24.1. And as part of the overall solution, as we kind of start to develop it, you'll see how all this stuff works in the end here. So that's the overall subnet. We got the SVI using .1, .2, .3. We got the firewall using .4 and .5, with the .4 being the active IP address. Okay, and then we also have the HA heartbeat in between. I know that it's E112. Drop that in there. Then I also have a nice little HA tag to show that it's what that's for. Because you can see we're starting to get in some good details there for how that all interconnects together. Probably want to throw in a VLAN 400 somewhere in there. We may shift that around as we polish it up. Using similar tags as the core switch. I had some pre-built ones here. Gonna drop those on top of the firewall. Again, that's a 15% transparency. Also have, so there's an active and a standby for the firewall. So little, oops, I put down there, little A for active and a little S for standby. Got VLAN 401 now. So now we're hitting our layer 2 switches using VLAN 401. Got the same on that side. Then of course we have the 401 trunk in the middle. Got some layer 2 icons we'll throw in there. We'll stick them there just to keep them out of the way. See if that works. Draw them on top of there. Drag those over here. Oops. Lift them up to get them out of the way there. So we got 76, 77, 76 being the active. We're in the 10.32.24.72/29 subnet. We're using IPs. 73 is the VIP, 70 or HSRP, active IP 74 and 75. VLAN 401 configuration and the layer 2 switches. No routing. Calling that out. I got a black little call out line that I created just for this occasion. Okay, and then little vendor router names there. Got some IP route bubbles showing what those routes should look like. IP route bubbles for the firewalls. Get some good details here. Got a black call out. Let's get that on here. Do that again over here. For these servers, I've already created a few of these bubbles. Kind of get those in there, line them up. Okay, so we got our primary server and our application servers that all the devices that are under here need to talk to. So we're calling that out, showing that it's that's on the enterprise network. We also have core services, DNS, NTP, etc. I'm just going to paste these in to save some time. Had those already ready to go. Let's just straighten them out. I'm just kind of visually doing it, not getting too wrapped up in overly perfect. Same with these two servers here. Okay. Also now have some bullet kind of high level items for each one of these zones. I'm just going to drop those in here and we'll adjust those as we see fit here. Kind of wanted to keep that on that side. Let's make some adjustments there. Going to drop in a little bit of VLAN information in there too. So created a little, using that VLAN tag, added the subnets so that information's pretty available there. I think this can be moved up and this can probably move down a little bit. Kind of centering it in those little areas is kind of the key, is just to give a little bit of space so you can easily read it. Try not to jam too many things close to each other. I like to kind of maybe move these over just a little bit. And do the same with these here. a little bit of a graphic showing the communication between the security zone, 2 arrows on each end, or a line with 2 arrows on each end. I think I wanted to do is add some vendor equipment just to sort of people can understand what that is about. So there's a mix of vendor APs, access points, workstation for monitoring, and then the actual wired telemetry devices. Found some pictures online. Just use that. Just drop it in there. Same with a blank workstation. That's always a good icon to put in your little bag of tricks. You can put logos on there, pictures of a web portal interface or some kind of specific GUI in it. Really, it goes a long way to show what you're trying to do. All right, so we have our zone names lined out there. We have our VLANs and our additional information. We got all the services. There's one thing that I wanted to do is that there is some redundancy as far as DNS, and I would imagine that there's a sequence to how they're configured on the devices themselves. So what I like to do is use an ABC type of graphic to call some of that stuff out. So I've created an ABC that I can just split up and put those in the order, and of course they're colored, so the orange are for DNS. Of course you can use whatever color you want, but just showing another tip of using color to kind of group things together. There's ungrouping. There's also DHCP, so the local DHCP server is the primary with a redundant DHCP and a data center. Don't need that one, get rid of it. And then last but not least, purple. We'll ungroup that. Shift Control U, boss move tip. We got our A, and we got our B. Don't need C. So then now you can see the sequence of how it's looking for DNS locally. First here, second, third. TCP local, this IP address first, this one second, and then A and B for their network time protocol. The last thing that I want to do after just kind of looking at things, kind of zooming in, double check my work. Looking down here, making sure that I didn't miss anything. I think I caught everything here. I think I wanted to add some circles. So I have some pre-built circles here. I want to add this for the security zone specifically. Really want to highlight that zone. So here I have an ellipse, and I created the dotted lines. So I'll make it 1.5. I think I'm going to make it red, and that's what I wanted to do here. So I'm going to make it a dark red, send it to the back. Now it really calls out that zone as there's something special going on there, and that's where the firewall is permitting or denying that traffic from passing through. Okay, and then the last thing that we can probably do here is I'd like to, of course, add a border. That's one of the tips from the website. But I've created an 11 by 17 border already and have it in my my stencil palette here. So all I got to do is just literally drag it over, make sure that it's equal around all the sides there. It's got a title, it's got my logo, got a project, department, engineer's name, and then the version. And it's already got a title and everything that I want to do. So telemetry, LAN, segmentation. I think it's going to be a little big, so I'm going to make that a touch smaller. And let's see, secure zone infrastructure. For the name, remove the guides if you had a bunch of them and you want to get a clear view. That's how you create the diagram, and I'll pull up the hand-drawn one. I did deviate a touch. I didn't include the switch from the vendor side just because it doesn't really matter for the solution that I'm drawing this for. They manage and support their own infrastructure and they have their own documentation. I'm really mostly concerned how that secure zone is created and dealt with on the hospital's network side. All right, thanks for joining, and give me a like button if you like what you see and you learned something, and I'll be motivated to produce more. Thank you very much.